Making a difference. Well, it's back to school time, and we need to ask ourselves, do we want to make a difference this year? In the close of our service today, we're going to be commissioning our students and teachers and administrators as they begin a new year. And today I want to talk with us about making a difference. Do we really want to make a difference this year? And then I guess the next question is, how then can we do it? Well, I believe we have some help here from Jesus himself. It's found in the very first gospel, Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. Matthew 5, 13 through 16. This is found in what is called the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus chooses two metaphors to describe the disciples, those original ones and us today. And so we begin at verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has sort of become tasteless, corrupted even, some translations, with what shall its flavor be restored? It is useful for nothing except to be cast out and to be trampled under the feet of men. You are the light of the world. A city sitting upon a hill is not able to be hidden, nor do men light a lamp and place it under a basket, but upon the lampstand, and it shines on all those in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Isn't that so good and so clear and concise? So we ask the question, how can we make a difference? I believe we can. Let me share some ways with you. One is we make a difference by realizing who we are. He uses these two metaphors. He doesn't say you have salt and you have light. He says you are salt and you are light. In the ancient world, and it's still used today, of course, this way, and there are many other usages, but primarily in the ancient world, salt was used as a preservative. It was rubbed into fish and meat to preserve them over a long period of time because they didn't have refrigeration back then. And salt was used as a preservative to keep meat or fish from going bad. And when Jesus says you are the salt of the earth, he's talking about the culture in which we live in. That the culture in which we live in is like meat or fish that is going bad, and that God has interjected us, his followers, as salt to be preservative in a culture in decay. Light, the other metaphor he uses, was used to illuminate homes and other structures at night. Now notice it says in verse 15, it gives light to all those in the house. Today, do you watch Home and Garden TV? You know, Fixer Upper and all that stuff. Almost everybody wants open concept. Now, that's true. I like open concept too, but it's sort of like that's new, you know, open concept. No. In the ancient world, most people that had homes, they were one-room homes. They were open concept, I'm telling you. Sleep, cook. Of course, they didn't have indoor plumbing back in those days, but, you know, everybody was all together. It was open concept. So if you put a lamp on a lampstand in the middle of the house, it would give light to everything that's in the house. And so light is used to illuminate. And thus, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. He assumes that the culture of the world is darkness. And so light comes in to give light to a dark world. And believers have been transformed by Jesus Christ, and we are now living examples of his grace and truth. And we are representatives of his kingdom in a world of decay and darkness. Now, I won't get into all the decay and darkness of our culture. We all know that. We see it all the time. But I want you to remember this little song. Do you remember this as a child? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Now that's a good song for children, but notice it says this little light of mine. It's like it's something different from us, like here's the light and here's us. Jesus said, you're it. You're the light. You are the light in this dark world. Isn't that a wonderful thing that Jesus says about his followers? So we make a difference by realizing who we are. Realize that you are salt and you are light. Secondly, we make a difference by refusing to be sidelined. Notice the second part of verse 13. It says, but if the salt has been mixed, sometimes your translations with that, with other corrupting materials, how will it regain its usefulness or its saltiness? It's good for nothing except to be cast out, and it loses its purpose. It loses its usefulness. You see, salt can become mixed with impurities and lose its usefulness. Light can be concealed, can't it? It can be. You can put a covering over it, and it's still burning, but it can't diffuse its rays out there. And so we can be sidelined, our salt and our light. In what ways could that happen? Sin can cause it. Compromise with the culture, that can cause it. Laziness can cause us to be sidelined. Neglect, fear, all of these things can cause us to be sidelined if we're not careful. Sadly to say, this has happened more than once. And some years ago, here in our church, our youth pastor at the time, previous youth pastor, was the chaplain of the Niceville High School football team. But over time, he had an inappropriate relationship with a female student who was connected to the football team. And the coach said, "You're out of here." And he has not had a chaplain since then. You see, we can become sidelined. We can. So your light and your salt, be careful. Don't become sidelined. And then a third way is we make a difference by responding to opportunities. In verse 16, he says, in the same manner, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Good works. The New Testament has two different words for good. One is agathos, and that refers to functional goodness. And if a computer works like it's supposed to, you got that? If a computer works like it's supposed to, it would be called agathos. It's functional goodness. Your computer could be ugly as homemade sin, but if it still functioned properly, it could be agathos, or it would be agathos. But that's not the word that Jesus uses here. It's the word kalos. Kalos also deals with function, but it's visible. It is winsome. It is appealing goodness. Both these words, agathos and kalos, refer to goodness, but kalos highlights that which is visible, that which can be seen. Thus, Jesus says, believers are to do visible, tangible, good deeds in our society for the glory of God. Let your light shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. And so, in doing that, Jesus says that the glory will go to God, that he will receive the credit. Now, what do we as believers bring to this culture of decay and darkness? What do we bring? Let me suggest several things to you. One is justice. Justice. Justice is to stand up for the less fortunate and the oppressed. Justice is to have honest dealings that imitate the character of God. Listen to the Bible. Amos 5:24 says, "But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." Also in the book of Amos, it says, "Hate evil and love good and establish justice in the gate." That's one thing we as believers bring to our decaying culture, is justice. Justice is not, from Jesus' perspective, just confined to law courts. It's how we interact in a culture that is decaying and in darkness. Will we stand up for the less fortunate and the oppressed? Will we have honest dealings that imitate the character of God? That's one thing that we can bring. Another is respect. Respect. To extend dignity to everybody, even with those we may disagree with. That's hard to do because we may so disagree with somebody, their lifestyle, that it causes us not to reach out toward them, but to avoid them. And that's not what Jesus would have us do. Listen to Genesis 1:27. "So God created mankind, in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." That's why we as believers give respect to all people, because all people have been created in the image of God. We may disagree with their lifestyles, but we owe them, because we're believers, because we've been created in the image of God, we owe them respect and dignity. Another thing that we bring is peace. Peace. To seek to reconcile those who are at odds with one another. Is there any of that going on in our community or in our world today? We see it all the time. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Blessed are the peacemakers, helping to reconcile, moving people together instead of forcing them apart, seeking to reconcile. That's something that we bring and the world needs, is peace. Something else that we bring is compassion. Compassion. To demonstrate concern to those who are hurting. In Matthew chapter 9, Jesus sees a crowd, and it says he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless. Harassed and helpless. Compassion is a movement toward people who are harassed and helpless. Just like the Good Samaritan, he saw somebody who had been harassed and helpless. Compassion is what we bring. Impartiality is another thing that we bring. to have no partiality or favoritism toward anyone based on possessions, appearance, position, or influence. In the book of James, chapter 2, it says, "My brothers and sisters, show no partiality as you hold the faith in our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory." Christians should be, of all people, the most impartial people, not showing favoritism to somebody or someone else. You know, sometimes Christians can actually do that. They can show favoritism. One of the ways we can do that as a church, if we just stay hemmed up in these four walls, we're showing favoritism to ourselves. And we're not concerned for the dark and decaying world in which we live. Impartiality. Another thing that we bring that nobody else brings at all is good news. The good news of Jesus Christ. Only believers can bring that. Government can't bring it. Business can't bring it. Social welfare can't bring it. Government can't bring it. Politicians can't bring it. Only Christians, born-again believers, followers of Jesus Christ. Listen to what Jesus said. "The thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that you might have life and have it to its fullest extent." That statement of Jesus will ring true in a decaying, dark culture, because we see stealing, killing, and destroying all around us. But Jesus comes to give life. Well, now, how do we apply this today? Let me give you some scenarios. And maybe one of these will sort of spark you, and you'll be drawn to it so that you might share yourself, your light, and your salt with this world. Most of these dealing with school. And I know most of us in here, we've been there and done that. And I heard an amen. No, we're still in school. We're still following Jesus, learning from him. But here are a few scenarios. One is name calling. Name calling. Can you think of things that you've heard people say about one another? Calling them names. Sometimes we might say it like this: "Those Democrats." I didn't hear Gail Ferris. But boy, you talk about in school, name calling. Do you remember, even when you were in school, the names that people called each other? I was at Annette P. Edmonds Elementary in grade 5. First time in my life where I ever heard the word Jaime. Jaime. Some of you may not know what that is. That's a derogatory word that refers to Jewish people. Name calling. Here's another scenario. Someone showing disrespect. Disrespect to somebody because maybe they're poor or they're not wearing the right shoes. Showing disrespect. Here's one. Someone doing poorly in a particular subject or a class. I'm so glad we have a group in our church that is involved at Edge Elementary. Some of you here today are a part of that ministry, where you're coming alongside a child who is struggling in something, math or language or something, to help them. You know, students in our schools, Christian students, could do the same thing with other students. Let's say you got somebody next to you in class and you know they're really struggling. And maybe, you know, you're sort of getting it. It's clicking for you. Maybe you could suggest, would you like to study together? My son, I'm telling you, he was not a stellar student. I don't know how many times at PTA meetings, parent-teacher meetings, your son has so much potential. We got so tired of hearing that. Your son has so much potential. It was his girlfriend in juniors in college who told him, you need to pull up your socks. You can do better than what you're doing. And guess what? He did. He did. Mom couldn't do it. Dad couldn't do it. Teacher couldn't do it. But a girlfriend did. Amen. They did not get married, though, David. They did not. Here's another scenario. Racial conflict. Racial conflict. I don't want to get involved in that, you know. Jesus said, you're salt and you're light. The world desperately needs both. Racial conflict is another. What if you are aware of somebody that's caught up in pornography? What about that? Just avoid them? Or somehow or another, do we try to make an opportunity happen? Do we try? Illegal drug use is rampant. Last Sunday, we heard about what a problem that is at Niceville High School. Illegal drug use. Sexual immorality. Someone considering suicide. These are all different scenarios in which become opportunities that need salt and light. Jesus said, you are salt. You are light. Niceville needs what Christians have. Niceville needs it. We need it ourselves, don't we? We need it ourselves. Well, let's meditate.